This is the Brisbane Lions Fancast with Dom Fay and Michael Whiting.
Yes, with a brand new intro. Hello, this is the Brisbane Lions Fancast back for season 2014 after what was a very hectic end to 2013, Mike.
Sure was, Dom. What about the intro? Aren't we? We're so much more professional this season.
Yeah, things have amped up a little bit. Thanks to Cotsy at the Lions putting that one together for us.
He's a good man, Cotsy, so he's done a great job with that intro. But we are back, and it has been a few months since we did our last show, and boy, so much has happened. We've had a game of footy last week and another one coming up on Sunday, and plenty to go over, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that after what was quite a hectic off-season, the pre-season kind of just went along in the background. There wasn't that much news coming out. I think people just pretty quietly went about their business. Leper coaching a new team, new game plan, and now we come out on Thursday and back in the headlines again of, I think some people were overreacting a little bit by saying that our season is not going to be very good based on that game, but it certainly wasn't the most impressive match.
Well, we had so many new faces for the Lions. There was 13 new faces, including guys that had been traded in, drafted in, rookies, a new coach, new coaching members with Simon Black on the coaching panel now, obviously, and a new board, and just a whole new feel at the Brisbane Lions, and a lot of new things to integrate. So you're right, the pre-season did just coast along, and people trying to learn new game plans and new systems, etc., etc. And last Thursday wasn't a great start. You can't sugarcoat it. There was a lot of kids having a run, but they got some great experience, and people think that's a cliche sometimes, but it's the truth. The only way you can learn how to play against men is by playing against them. So it served its purpose in that regard, but I think this Sunday against the Gold Coast Suns in Townsville is sort of the unofficial start of the season, I think, with all the senior players coming back in. Yeah,
it does seem to me, though, just judging on what coaches have said, particularly Guy McKenna at the Suns, he's making it out that he is likely to rest a few players for this Sunday's match, whereas Leper is very much saying that we're going to play an almost full-strength side. So it may be a bit of a mismatch come Sunday, but from Thursday night's game, I think there were a few minor positives to take out of it. Particularly, I thought Dane Zorko had an impressive game as captain. I thought Ryan Lester was very good. We're chatting him on the Fancast a little later on in the show. I think he got 24 touches, which is really good. And obviously, you saw bits and pieces from the young guys. But I think outside of that, reading any further into a result that was essentially a premiership side against a NEFL side, you'd be unwise.
Yeah, I think it was just probably a good opportunity to see. There's probably, I think Leper said about a week or so ago that there's maybe 6 spots up for grabs in that round 1 team, or 5 or 6 spots that he hasn't quite got clear in his head. So it was probably a chance to maybe run 10 or 15 young players through last Thursday night just to see what they could do, and just to see which of those fringe players were going to put their hand up. So that's what the coaching staff and will have identified from that, which of those guys have sort of maybe moved up the pecking order. But you're right on Zorko. He's been one of the more impressive guys over the pre-season. He's noticeably improved aerobically. His fitness is so much better now than what it was, and it wasn't poor by any standard, but he's certainly taken that up a notch and seems to have gone to another level with his professionalism and his play. So it was great to see him lead the team and do so well from the front, and we can expect another good year out of him.
So after a very well-deserved month or so off for you, after I think you had just about the busiest end of last year of anyone working in Queensland, I reckon.
It was. I was glad to go away from footy for a few weeks.
You did come back, and you have been a regular presence at the pre-season training sessions throughout January and also throughout this month. I'm just wondering what you make of how the pre-season's shaping up and of the new game plan that's been coached in. Have you got any initial impressions?
Yeah, well, again, I have been down there quite a bit, a couple of times a week anyway. Obviously, when there's so many new faces, I'm going down there to see how they're going. I've sort of taken particular interest in the guys like James Aish and Nick Robertson and those sort of fellas. I've taken a particular sort of interest in, just to, well, firstly, familiarise myself with names and faces. Like, that's a tricky thing when there's so many new guys. But the game plan, I guess we'll see it as it evolves over the season, but certainly it looks like the Lions want to really try and press in their forward half. That's one thing that does seem noticeable. Everyone seems to press up at once, and when the ball moves out of defence, everyone keeps moving forward. That seems quite noticeable to me. I guess we'll see how that evolves and how taxing that can be. It's quite a taxing sort of a game plan. But I guess we'll see once it's under pressure and in a match situation. But that's one noticeable thing, and they're obviously working on the transition of the ball from defence to attack, and it's probably a little bit more, in training anyway, it seems to be a little bit more boundary line sort of orientated. So I guess we'll see how it pans out once there's some pressure on.
A bit later in the show, after we chat to Ryan Lester, we will go through our season forecasts for the year, which will be a bit of fun going off last year's. I think I was quite wide of the mark last year. But I just want to briefly touch on a few things that have been out in the media. It seems to me the general perception is that we're in for a poor season, that we're in for, I think Jay Clark from the Herald Sun maybe tweeted or wrote the other day that his value bet was the Lions at $1.80 something to get under 7.5 wins for the year. And I'm not entirely sure I see it. Now, yes, we did lose a few players, but only really Elliot Yeo was a starter for us in the best 22. And the only real logic that I can see behind it is a new coach comes in, and yes, there's a new game plan being coached in, and people, whenever they think new coach, new game plan, think back to Richmond under Damien Hardwick and the start that happened there. But this is a different situation. I mean, we were really one kick away from making the finals last year.
A Ryan Lester kick.
Yeah, exactly. Reckon that'll be brought up?
Might do. You're right, and there's a bit of guessing involved when there's a new coach, because you mentioned Damien Hardwick's beginning there, like Alistair Clarkson if you want to go back 10 years. But you also look at guys in the very recent years of Ken Hinkley at Port Adelaide and Brenton Sanderson at Adelaide. They had terrific, I guess, form reversals with their clubs in their first years, where they had teams down in the bottom 4 or 5 and were able to lift them into the top 8 the next year. I think generally you're going to get a bit of a spike in performance when you've got a new coach, because every single person on that list wants to impress their new coach. They've all got something to play for. The guys that were out of favour with Vossi have now got a new chance. The guys that were in favour have got to prove themselves again. So I think you're right. I can't see the Lions going backwards, but I think it's still a very big jump to get into that top 8. And there's probably 6 or 8 or maybe even 10 teams fighting for 2 or 3 spots at the bottom of that 8. So I think it's going to be tricky to get in, but I mean, it would be quite a big drop to drop below that sort of 6 or 7 win mark that you mentioned earlier. Yeah,
it really would be. And I feel kind of like we sit here at the start of season 2014 in a very similar situation to where the club was at the start of 2013, which is some impressive form being shown, but inconsistent. Obviously, it's all changed now, new coaching panel, including a new senior coach. But it does feel to me like we are still a side with potential, now looking to finally take the step towards performance.
I think what you said before was right. Like, there's not, other than Elliot Yeo, there's not going to be much difference there. There's still, the core of the team's still the same. There's still Matthew Leuenberger, Daniel Rich, Tom Rockcliffe, Pierce Hanley, etc., Daniel Merritt and Joel Patfull down back. So the majority of the team is pretty much settled. I think there's a couple of, Sam Mays will have another year under his belt. James Aish will more than likely come into the team. Still trying to search for a forward line combination, I think, which will be interesting in the early part of the season as it evolves. But you're right, there's not much, those 5 guys that left and a couple of others that were delisted, not going to make a whole heap of difference to that team that played last year, and they were more than competitive, particularly in that last sort of 10 or 12 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Someone who will certainly be trying to cement a place in the senior lineup is Ryan Lester, and we'll be chatting to him on the Fancast right after this.
The Brisbane Lions official club app lets you have all your Lions content in the palm of your hand. News, videos, scores, stats, player profiles and more. And it's free. Plus, if you're a Telstra NextG customer, it's unmetered, so there's no data charges. The Brisbane Lions app available right now for both iPhone and Android.
He led the possession count in the match against Hawthorn, and he joins us now. It is Ryan Lester. How are you going, Ryan?
Yeah, good, thanks, boys. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good. Just initial impressions. How do you think the pre-season's gone for the club and for you personally?
Yeah, it's been exciting times around the club, obviously with a new coach, and with Arizona was all exciting for the boys. So I think I've definitely found it the easiest pre-season to sort of get through. Obviously the breakup with going overseas for a training camp helped that a lot, and a new coach with fresh ideas certainly helps.
Can you tell the listeners and the fans out there, Ryan, what the biggest difference is with having Lepper on board? He's only been there a couple of months, but what have you noticed from him that might have been different from your first few years?
Yeah, I think obviously on the back of the 5 boys leaving in the off-season, the club sort of had a look more at not just what we do at training, but outside of training. So just creating a more relaxed environment for the boys to sort of enjoy themselves. And I think that's been a big catalyst for sort of that mental freshen up, if you like.
Speaking of those guys who did leave, now it's been done to death, but I just want to briefly touch on the fact that now from the 2010 and 2011 national drafts, it is only you, Josh Green and Patrick Weirden left. Do you feel a bit of added pressure perhaps or onus to step up and fill a bit of a void?
Nah, not really. Me and Greenie have joked about that a few times actually, that we were the last one standing, but I think once you're in the system, you sort of get swept up. It doesn't really matter whether you're a first year or a 10th year. Everyone seems to be sort of on the same level. So, I don't think I read into that too much.
Was it tough for you to lose some people who were probably close friends, seeing as you got drafted alongside them?
Yeah, it was, but I think you sort of realise and understand their situations, and the writing was on the wall a little bit midway through the year, so it was certainly no shock for a few of those boys, but I'm still in contact with quite a few of them, and I think I'll still be good friends with them, so it's no big issue.
And you mentioned there, Ryan, that you've tried to create a bit more of a relaxed atmosphere around the club. Did you have sort of quite a bit of input into the fallout from why those players left, being the same age and being in the same sort of draft crop? Did you sort of have to provide a lot of feedback on how you'd found things the first couple of years?
I've definitely been sort of questions from time to time from some of our leaders and that sort of thing, sort of how I've found it and what my first impressions were, but I think at the end of the day, it's probably down to the individual and how they sort of attack the challenge and that sort of thing. So, I've moved away from home, same as a lot of the other boys, and, I tried my best to sort of enjoy it up here and play the best footy I could. And, I've now got a lot of close mates up here, so definitely very happy to be up in Brisbane.
I do need to touch on something that you probably don't really want to think about, which was that round 23 match against Geelong last year. I'm just wondering, how long did it take you to stop having nightmares about that final moment?
I got over it once. We were on the bus and Carlton beat Port Adelaide, so the boys, it all became just a big joke after that, really. Obviously, it was disappointing and it would have been a good moment for me, but we just joke about that now, so I've looked past that.
What about this year, personally, Ryan? What have you had to? You've sort of forged a bit of a home in a pretty regular home in the midfield in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Is that something you've continued to work on? And I guess what have you done in the preseason to try and further enhance yourself as a first option in the middle of the ground? Yeah,
definitely. I'm obviously trying to cement a spot as an inside midfielder at the club, so that's sort of been a project for as you said, the last 18 months. So just coming to this pre-season, I just wanted to continue to hone my skills in that area, which obviously inside midfield, you need to be good with your hands and good with your body positioning around stoppages. So that's been my main focus, and I've been lucky. I get on quite well with Brent Maloney, and he's obviously very good at that position, so he helps me out a lot with that, and then just try and take bits and pieces from other boys' games.
And obviously, the focus going into each year is something of a fair bit of interest to the fans. And I know you'll never, very few clubs, bar Carlton last year, will go into a season saying it's finals or bust this year. But I'm just wondering, is the feel within the club that this is a year of, I suppose, consolidating a bit, or is it a year of continually growing and hopefully pushing for a final spot where you think you are at that stage of development?
Yeah, it's interesting. We really haven't talked about it and haven't set any goals in terms of where we want to finish this year. And I think when people find out that we sort of missed the finals by a goal last year, they're actually quite surprised, because for a lot of the season we were probably quite a way off the mark. But if we can just get that consistency, and obviously Leper's brought new ideas which may take a bit of time to adjust to, but we've certainly got no limitations as to what we're expecting this year. And I think with a lot of boys around the 80 to 90 games, a lot of boys around the 30 to 40 games, there's going to be that natural improvement. So hopefully that results in good team success as well.
We've heard a lot about Leper's new game plan, or that phrase has been thrown around a lot in the pre-season, Ryan. I guess we've only seen a small bit of evidence. But from the outside, it looks like there's going to be a lot more emphasis on defensive pressure, particularly in that forward half on a whole team basis, and your ball movement from the back line to the forward line. I guess firstly, is that right? And without giving everything away, can you let us know what you have worked on? Yeah,
obviously Leper's brought ideas from Richmond, which happened to come from Hawthorn, being obviously Hardwick was at Hawthorn as an assistant coach for a while there. So it was actually interesting playing against them on the weekend, because you get a greater understanding of sort of what they're trying to do. And a lot of it is the way we attack has got to go hand in hand with the way we want to defend. So, I probably don't want to go into it too much, but it's got to do with sort of our ball movement and then the way we press up the field, which is obviously the way modern day football's heading, that the game's sort of played in half the ground a lot of the time. All the players are in half the ground. So, I don't think it's anything groundbreaking, but just probably adapting to what the last few premiership teams have been doing.
Just one more before we let you go. I did put out on Twitter that we were getting you on the show, and Sean's tweeted in. He's interested to know where the nickname Froggy came from.
Yeah, I think one night after the game, Zorko and Golby went through everyone's name on the list and created an emoji off their mobile phones for them, and somehow I ended up with Froggy. And I don't know why, because none of the other boys' names are stuck, but Froggy seems to have stuck for me. So I don't think there's much more than that into it. But
they're kidding themselves, aren't they? Golby and Zorko.
Well, thanks for joining us on the Fancast today. All the best for the rest of the preseason and season 2014 ahead.
No worries. Thanks, guys.
This weekend, the Lions head up to Townsville for the second of 3 NAB Challenge games. It's a 3:40 start against the Gold Coast Suns. Mike, you're heading up for the match. You looking forward to this one?
Can't wait, actually. Yeah, it'll be good to go up to Townsville and see what the footy's like up in North Queensland. And as we touched on earlier in the show, it looks like Brisbane will play possibly their strongest team available, and Gold Coast will rest a few players like Ablett, O'Meara, Swallow, Riscatelli. So they've sort of reversed Brisbane's round 1 theory of resting a few guys. They're going to do it this weekend, but should be a really good matchup still. The Gold Coast have still got Jack Martin, Jesse Lonigan, Harley Bennell coming in for his first game, so plenty of class midfielders there still. Should be exciting.
Definitely. I'm sure there'll be a lot to dissect about that game next week. Just our season forecast. We do this in the first episode every year. We'll kick it off with the Premier. Who do you think is going to take out the 2014 Premiership, Mike?
I'm going Fremantle. I think they were there last year and knocking on the door, and I think the old theory of being there once and coming back and getting it a second time. So I'll stick with Freo, I think. What about you, Dom?
It's a bit from left field. I reckon North Melbourne.
North Melbourne. Whoa! I think we'll play it. If you pull that off, you'll be a genius, mate.
Well, I just have a feeling they've shown at their best that they have been almost the best side in the competition when they have hit that form. And I just think, adding Del Santo into the mix, they're just going to be a team this year that's going to surprise quite a few, I reckon. So,
well, I can't wait to watch them. I think they're a very exciting team to watch.
Yeah, they definitely are. We'll jump on to Brownlow medal. Who do you think for the Brownlow?
Well, huge shock here. I'm going with Gary Ablett. It's you're not going to win a lot of money going to the bookies and betting on Gaz, but I just can't go past him. Lucky enough to watch him every second week, and he's still the best player in the competition, so I'm just going to stick with him. But I'm sure you'll be going a little bit more risky than that.
A little bit. I'm going Nat Fyfe, so not that much more risky. I think I may have gone Fyfe last year as well, but I just think if he plays a full season, if Freo are thereabouts, he will be right up in the rankings. So I think he's a pretty safe bet to be top 10.
It's an astute bet, I think. He's a great player, Nat.
Club champion, who's going to take out the Merritt Murray medal?
I'm going Big Matty Leuenberger this year. I think good pre-season, hasn't had one for a couple of years. Terrific 2013, and I think with a little bit of help from Trent West to chop him out when he gets tired, as Lepper seems to want to go with 2 ruckmen. So I think a bit of help in the ruck will help Louis enormously, and I think he might just sneak home this year for the Merritt Murray medal. Who do you think, mate?
I'm going to go to win his second, Tom Rockcliffe. I think Rocky will play a predominantly midfield role this year. I think he's going to win a lot of the ball, and I think he's going to take another step forward as a player and take home his second one. And, of course, the all-important one, where do you think the Lions are going to finish on the ladder? Now, obviously, last year you were going something like 12th, I think, and I went 7th. Which is to see where you think we'll finish up this year.
Well, I'm probably going to lose a few more. I wouldn't say I've got any fans, but I think any that I've got, I'm going to lose probably again, because I think they're going to finish in a similar position. I think Brisbane will finish about 12th again, and I can just see a very similar season to last year. I think there's just a few clubs around that mark that are going to be hard to climb over. I think Brisbane will be there, but not quite good enough to get in the 8. Do you think they'll go forwards in 2014, Dom?
I do, but only marginally. I'm a bit more realistic this year. I think new game plan. You've got, obviously, even though losing the 5, they weren't best 22 players by Yo, but I do think it does mean the kids who will be playing will be younger. So that'll take a little longer to come along. So I'm going with 11th this year. I think we'll finish up 11th.
And I think the important thing this year is, and we touched on it, ad nauseum last season, was just the blowout losses. If you can minimise those and the percentage is up sort of closer to 100, meaning you're competitive every game, that's the way Brisbane can step forward this year as a starting point. And if they can sneak a few wins early, well, I mean, you never know. As we know with a new coach, you can get an improvement in performance and you can surprise a few people. But as a base mark, they've got to improve and narrow the margin between their worst and best performances.
Yeah, definitely. That is all we've got time for on the Brisbane Lions Fancast this week. We'll be back next week to review the match against the Gold Coast Suns. Until then, bye.
See ya.